Lunella's got a brand new suit. What will we get this time? Hey everyone, welcome to Princess of Gay. I'm your host, Connie, and today we are here with my blind reaction to episode 3 of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur Season 2. So, yeah. Last time, Lunella went with Mimi to visit some of Mimi's old friends from when she was the original Moon Girl, and we got a bunch of science shenanigans going on. All in the, all for the reason of making and upgrading the Moon Girl suit. Which, while Casey is great with the style, she can't really help with the tech too much. And this was also a way for Lunella to kind of get away after everything that happened. But the trauma did follow her. And she was able to work through some of it with Mimi and just through, having a different perspective on things. But if you understand how trauma works, it's not gone. And if this show understands how trauma works, it's not gone. Because trauma can't just be fixed that easily. Trauma sticks with you, even when you have these small victories that help you get through the day, that help you get through a specific scenario, etc., etc. Like, it comes back. And trauma it usually affects you, at least from my perspective, in waves. You don't, feel it constantly all the time. Though, it might be different on a case-by-case basis. But for me, at least, the traumas I've faced have come and gone in waves. It's like sometimes I'll just be really fucking sad, almost out of nowhere. It affects me, without even thinking about specifically what had happened. But then if I do hear about things that are in that sort of ballpark, I'll just say it, sexual assault, it also starts to really grip at me during those moments. Hearing anything in regards to that, even a news story or, someone talking about it, or a show showcasing it, like Has Been Hotel, it's like that affects me. Because, again, I understand it from a personal perspective, and it triggers the traumas I went through. So, yeah, fun discussion here, but this is important, clearly, to how this season is starting. Because it would be a pretty big screw-up if they just made Lunella's trauma go away this easily and quickly. And I don't think they're going to do that, because the writers and creators of this show are so smart. They are so actively smart and, know what they're doing with these characters. With the various plot threads and moments we saw in Season 1, I can't see them making a mistake like that. That just doesn't really click with me as being, logical or possible. But, again, I don't know for sure, because we haven't started watching this episode yet. And the thing is, like I said, it can come and go in waves, so even if we don't see it this episode, that doesn't mean it won't be back. It's a person-by-person basis on how it affects them and, what can help with it and everything. For me, the way I usually deal with it when that trauma really hits hard, I I sometimes just kind of disassociate a little bit. Like, there have been times where I've just, like, sat here on the couch or laid in bed or something and just done nothing. And just kind of, like, barely, like, existed in a way. You know what I mean? Where it's just like you're just sitting or laying there and it's just like you're not really thinking of anything. You're just existing. You're just, like, living, but you're not, like, actively doing. So it's a weird feeling, especially when you come out of that and realize that you've been doing that, or I guess not doing that, however you want to word it. It's a really weird feeling to realize you've been disassociating like that. But a more common way that I tend to deal with this kind of stuff is I tend to seek comfort. And that can be through a number of different things, but a lot of the time it's through YouTube. I'll turn on something on YouTube, a reaction, or a video from a series or something. Something that'll just bring my mood up. And of course I have to be picky about what I choose for that, but still. Because certain things could make it worse. But yeah, I do stuff like that, and sometimes, like, seeking comfort can come, like, with food as well. Food can be very comforting. Sometimes it comes with music. But that's usually what I do. I seek out comfort in one of those kinds of ways. I just feel like it just is the most helpful thing most of the time. And like I said, just because I have a small victory over it doesn't mean it's going to go away. Like, I'll have moments where it's like, oh yeah, I've beaten this at the moment. I've overcome this. I feel so much better right now. Next day, I could be right back into the thick of it. Hell, in an hour, I could be back in the thick of it. Because that's how it can work. So, yeah, it's really hard to deal with, too. Because it's so much that's flooding your mind and just, like, affecting the way you think and the way you feel. It really does fuck with your mental health really badly sometimes. And there's some times where it's so debilitating that it can completely shut you down and really fuck you up. There's been a couple of times where it got so bad that I didn't really react to anything or, you know, exist in any meaningful way for well over 24 hours. I could say that much. There's been a couple times where I've literally just laid in bed doing nothing for that long. Just because my mind could not, like, do anything to deal with it. It's just, it's a lot. And obviously, like I said, everyone's experience is going to be different. I can only share my own and what I've heard from other people who have, like, talked about dealing with this as well. So, yeah. Sorry for getting very real there for a bit. But like I said, this is kind of a big topic. And it needed a big discussion about it. This series is very careful to portray things in a very smart, meaningful way. And I just can't see them, like, fixing Lunella's trauma this quickly. It would be so out of place for them to do, because I know that they do better most of the time. It would just be so, like, aggressively, kind of out of character, you could say. And the only way I could see them doing it is if they were, like, mandated to do so. Like, oh, you can't have this trauma in your series for too long. It's going to put off viewers. And so the network told them to stop it. That's the only thing I could see. But yeah. I guess we'll just, continue watching, because obviously I love this series. And see how they handle things. Like I said, I don't expect it to be in every episode, because it can come and go like that for some people. But I just don't expect it to really be in every episode anyways, because that's just... it just doesn't feel like it would make sense for it to be. But we'll see. I mean, there's nothing wrong if it is, as long as it's handled well still. But, you know, I just don't expect that it will be. Anyway, we should probably get on with this, because I have no clue where this is going to go. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just here for the ride, my dudes. So, when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. And for now, I'm Connie, and I almost did my signing off thing. The problem's with being tired. Thank you so much for tuning in, and for now, I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So this is not a new concept, of, like, you know, friend tries to organize another friend's stuff, and it ends up causing arguments and fights and everything. I've seen that done before. Obviously, the specific execution of this was more unique and everything, but in general, it was just like, okay, we've seen this kind of thing. It's not that surprising, not that exciting, all in all. The appeal of this episode, though, was the friendship aspect, of course, which sounds corny and cheesy, but it was. Because we've seen an entire season now of Lunella and Casey's friendship, and so this episode feels like it's being, you know, placed at the right point. Where it's like, okay, we've seen how good of friends they are, and I think we've seen them, like, have arguments and stuff before, but this is a good point to show them have, like, a really big argument that kind of threatens their friendship a little bit. Like, even though we know, obviously, nothing's gonna, like, come from it, they're gonna remain, you know, best friends. That's just not changing. Even despite that, that's just the kind of vibe that it gets from it. That's what they're going for. It's one of those big fights. And both of them were kind of in the wrong, as it states at the end. But Casey was more in the wrong. And I'm saying this as someone whose favorite character is Casey. Casey was more in the wrong. Here's the thing. Casey was set to clean up the lab and everything, and she did all these improvements on it. That's great. But you also take Lunella's workspace, something that, you know, has to be very specifically handled. And you organize it in a way that works for you. In a way that would, you know, cause problems for Lunella to get accustomed to, which is not a good thing when you're doing, like, potentially volatile science. And we see in the episode, of course, why Casey is doing all of this and why she's, like, becoming overbearing and stuff. It's because she's afraid of losing her again. Like, almost losing her in that portal at the end of the last season and everything was probably one of the scariest moments of her life. So yeah, I understand that she's, you know, freaked out by all of that. We actually get to see how this is not only affecting Lunella with her PTSD, but also seeing how it's affecting those around her. Specifically those who know about what happened. While Mimi and Devil seem to be okay at the moment, Casey clearly was not. She was so scared to lose Lunella that she became, you know, overprotective of her. Doing all this color coordination and stuff was her way of like, oh, we have to make sure everything's just right so nothing bad happens again. And I understand that, but she was definitely in the wrong here. Again, and especially once they started fighting, Casey became very petty. Like, again, so did Lunella, unquestionably. But Lunella's big thing was her being, like, over-controlling. And it's like, it is her space, though. That's the thing. That's another reason why Casey was in the wrong here. This isn't Casey's space. It's just not. If Lunella wishes to share it with Casey to a degree, that's fine. But this is Lunella's lab. This is Devil's basically base of operations. Because he kind of needs to have that being a giant dinosaur and all. This is not something that Casey really has any claim over. Casey trying to take control of it and calling it our space is just wrong. Again, if Lunella wishes to share it with her, that's fine, but that doesn't make it her space as well. It's still fully Lunella's space. And I feel like that's probably the biggest issue that Casey had in this episode. Because of how much she was afraid to lose Lunella, she was forcing herself into everything as well. And luckily, by the end, both of them did apologize. But again, Casey obviously was more in the wrong than Lunella was. Once it started devolving into pettiness, though, with them, like, trying to, like, increase the sound to one-up each other and everything, at that point, they were both kind of equally in the wrong. Because they were doing the same things and just being annoying. It was just... It's just a matter of, like... Casey did more negative things here. And I just think that... in the end... she definitely needed to apologize, and I would have been really upset if she didn't. And again, I'm saying this as with her being my favorite character. Because, believe it or not, I know some people need to hear this still, but just because you love a character does not mean that they're flawless. Just because a character is well written and awesome doesn't mean that they can't make mistakes and do things wrong and fuck up. Like, characters aren't perfect. And you're almost never going to find a character who is. And the only ones you will find aren't even going to be good characters, so... But, like, I look at characters like, I don't know, just Korra from Legend of Korra as an example. And it's like, there's so many people out there who try to, like, act like Korra is, like, this perfect character, and that's why they don't like her. And it's like, the fuck kind of show are you watching? Korra is not perfect. In fact, Korra is, like, kind of as far away from perfect as almost possible. She's a mess. Korra is a fucking mess. And that's actually why I love her as much as I do. Why The Legend of Korra is one of my favorite shows. Because Korra is a fuck-up. That's what appeals her to me. That's what I connect with. She fucks up all the time, constantly. It's kind of a major plot point of the series. It's like people who like say like she's a Mary Sue are just like so media illiterate, it's not funny. It's like, how can you watch a series where literally one of the major points of the show is that the main character is not a Mary Sue? How can you watch that and think like she's just this perfect, overpowered being? Like, yeah, she's a prodigy when it comes to bending. But in, like, literally everything else, she's, you know, a fuck-up. Like, her mistakes are, again, literally part of the story after book 2. It's just, Jesus. But the point is, Casey's my favorite character, and yeah, she's going to fuck up. She's going to make mistakes. And by God, did she in this episode. It doesn't stop her from being my favorite character. Because it's just mistakes. It's something that could happen to anyone. It's not that big a deal. And it was obvious where this was going as well, with them obviously going to make up in the end and admit to their wrongdoings. So, why... excuse me. Why waste the time getting, like, upset at her, demoting her from favorite character status, if I know that it's just going to be resolved by the end of the episode? It just didn't really make a lot of sense, you know? And again, like, people are flawed. Pretty much by nature. So, I actually really like when shows showcase this kind of stuff. Showcase characters, you know, fucking up and being flawed. And I hope that we continue to see more of that in this series, in this season. That would be ideal, honestly. We also saw the Beyonder in this episode briefly, but very briefly. He really didn't add much. It was just a short little, like, cameo, like, oh, hey, I'm still here. Excuse me. But yeah, this was a good episode. It wasn't my favorite, even with it being so Casey heavy. Because again, it's stuff I've seen before. It's not altogether that new. And that's like the big thing that just keeps it from really, really being great for me. But maybe in the future, we'll get something even better for Casey. And again, I still like this episode, so hey. But tell me in the comments below, what did you think of this episode of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur Season 2? And for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.